Welcome back to the channel. As some of you can probably tell, I've been playing the absolute shit out of Coral Island and love just about every aspect of it. Except for the diving. Well, I guess I should say I enjoy the diving aspect in the game and I think it's a fun mechanic, but there's a few major pet peeves that really bother me. And you probably don't know this about me, but I am actually dive certified and have been diving a fair amount throughout my life, mainly in the Atlantic and some in the Caribbean. I've done everything from wreck dives to spearfishing to even just swimming around beautiful coral reefs similar to those in Coral Island. There are a few mechanics in-game that directly contradict rules we are taught in dive class that are actually harmful to the very reefs we are supposedly trying to save in Coral Island. Now I know I'm hardcore nitpicking, and in reality one diver doing these few things probably isn't the end of the world, especially considering how much trash and oil is spread around Coral Island as it is, but I still wanted to talk about these things. I just find it kind of hypocritical that in-game we are trying to do good by the environment when our actions when diving completely contradict that. So the first and one of the most important things we are taught as new divers is to maintain buoyancy when diving so that we float above the ocean floor. And a very quick explanation of how we do this basically is by regulating the air in our BC and by our breathing. In game, we don't actually have a BC, or at least one that looks like normal BCs. We've got this fancy futuristic little fanny pack, which I'm assuming is acting as our BC, and oxygen as well, because how else would we be able to breathe underwater? Without maintaining buoyancy, like I was just talking about, you will walk or crawl along the surface of the ocean floor, which is a huge no-no. You might be thinking, well, as long as you're not walking on the coral reefs and in the sand, then it shouldn't be a problem, right? Unfortunately, no, not exactly. Corals are porous and eat algae that makes its way into the pores of the coral. So if you're not just walking but bouncing like our character does on the sandy bottom, you're going to kick up a lot of sand. And this sand is going to flow into the corals instead of the algae, which will effectively block food from making its way inside the coral, which will eventually obviously kill the coral. Now, like I said before, you will probably only run into this serious problem if there are a lot more divers, but since you're apparently the only person on the island that dives, it probably won't be a huge issue. In my opinion, it's still important to promote good diving habits, and jumping around on the ocean floor is quite possibly the worst thing you can do without physically ripping off pieces of coral. The next thing is also extremely important, but I understand why it's there from a game mechanic. It should be obvious, but another thing you're taught as a new diver is to not fuck with the ocean wildlife. I'm more so referring to picking up shells with living creatures in them or catching beautiful little seahorses only to sell them for money. I mean, at what point are we any worse than pufferfish? We aren't as destructive as oil is, certainly, and we are cleaning up the trash laying on the ocean floor, but at what cost? Our character bounces along on the ocean floor to get to a happy little seahorse or a hermit crab that we either catch to donate to the museum or throw into our shipping bin to be sold for money to improve our farm to make more money. And maybe I'm being a little bit dramatic here, putting us on the same level as pufferfish, considering that we are cleaning up the mess that they created. I know that diving in the game really isn't realistic, and I'm more so just poking fun at the game, but I think it is important to know that the things I mentioned before are huge no-nos in the diving community. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing because I've got a lot more Coral Island content coming your way. If you have any questions about diving or about Coral Island in general, please drop them in the comment section below and I'd be more than happy to answer them. Peace out, YouTube.